In this video, I will show you how to turn a boring website into a crazy animation. And of course, we're going to use YouTube for the website and we're going to use After Effects to animate it all. Now, if you want to learn more about After Effects and want to become a better editor, then do join the Social Creator Club Pro. Links in the description, and in this pro community, you will get access to several deep dives. You will get access to potential clients. You will learn how to do your own sales, and you can also participate in the editing challenge. Again, link is in the description, and let's jump into it. Now I have YouTube open because we're going to take a screenshot first. And basically I'm doing this on Mac by holding Command-Shift-4. But if you're on Windows, there's also a cool plugin in Chrome, which is called Go Full Page. We can just drag this and make sure to get everything on it except the sidebar. Now, if you want to have it in a different format, of course, you can resize the bar a bit, but we're going to use it as basically a template because we have to recreate elements in After Effects anyway. Now, before you go, we also need to download this video. And of course, you can use any YouTube downloader for this. Now that you did that, you can open your After Effects and let's just create a new composition. Let's set the preset to 4K 25 frames per second, and we can also give it a name or keep it comp1. And then the duration we can set to, for example, 10 seconds. Background black is fine, and let's press OK. Now I'm going to import the screenshot and of course the video. And let's start out with the screenshot. We can just drag this in and then we can right click, transform, fit to comp with to make sure that it's filled as much as possible. Cool. And of course we can now separate everything, or what we can do is create a whole new UI. Basically, you can choose to keep the website how it is, or you can elevate it, make it more minimalistic, and we're going to go for that second option. So let's look at this. We already have the video, of course, so we don't have to look at that, but we have the title here. We can leave that out or we can include that. Let's include that. So just go to the type tool and we can just type here, do hard things. I'm using the font Helvetica New, and we can change the fill color here. Now I actually want to keep it white because I'm gonna use a dark theme here. So let's just set this maybe to a bit of white, not perfectly white. That will make it a bit more cinematic, something like this. Press OK. Then I'm gonna turn the stroke off and I'm gonna make it a bit smaller. And let's try to use the same type of size. Let's go to the selection tool and let's overlay this a bit. And we can see it. We can always adjust this a bit later. Maybe I'm even gonna make it even smaller. Now let's also align it to the left and then move it still a bit, so it's a bit better aligned. If you just want to quickly check, we can also turn the background off just to see what it looks like. Cool. Now the next part is this icon. I think this icon is also really cool. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to change my rectangle tool to the ellipse tool by clicking and holding your mouse down. And then we can just drag this while you hold shift to make sure that this just selects the avatar. And we can even move it around by holding your space bar with it too. So you're holding shift and space bar. So we can move this a bit, and we could adjust this later on, but I think this is actually perfect. Just to quickly see what it looks like, we can turn the layer below off, as you can see. Cool. And of course we can rename this to avatar. Perfect. Now next part is the name. I think there's too much information. We don't really need the subscribers in my opinion. So we can just go to the text that we created. We can press Command D to duplicate this and move this down below. And we can just type here KC Neistat. Perfect. Cool. Now let's go back to the selection tool and let's move a bit to the right. And here we can see the subscribe button. I do think that's really iconic. We could leave it out to make it even more minimalistic, but let's include it. So we're going to go to the rounded rectangle tool. So just make sure to click and hold your mouse down and go to the rounded rectangle tool. Make sure nothing is selected, and then we can just somewhat create the same shape. I'm just going to go over it. So something like this. Now the roundness is actually perfect. But if it's not, for example, if yours is set to really low, then it will probably look something like this. But in this case, we need to set it quite high. And then for the fill color, we could go for white, black, or anything else. I think it's actually cool to make it red and maybe like a darkish red, something like this. Press OK. Now let's go back to the selection tool and let's select this text again. Duplicate this, move this above our shape layer, and then we can drag this here and we can type here subscribe. Now, of course, we need to select this by hitting Command A or Control A on Windows. And then let's make this a bit more thin, a bit smaller. Let's move this That looks really nice, right? Now we could also use a different design for this. And if you want some inspiration, do check out websites like Dribbble, Pinterest, or even Behance. And to give you an example, I can quickly show some. So for example, this one is on Behance. Really cool elements that we can use for this. This one is also on Behance. Also looks super, super dope, as you can see. Also one on Dribbble. As you can see, still the upload date here. I do see also the view counter, but look at the view icon. I think that's so creative. I also really love this glass effect. And another example on Dribbble. Also looks super dope, and maybe we can use elements. I think maybe actually the subscribe button also looks super cool. Maybe we're gonna do something like that with like a red outline and then just subscribe in the middle. Now going back to our design, let's now create the description. I think the description can be way more minimalistic. So let's go to the rounded rectangle tool, make sure nothing is selected. Let's zoom out a bit and let's make sure that this is the same width as the video, something like this. Now I'm gonna stylize this a bit. I'm gonna change the roundness to a lower amount, maybe something like this, still more than the normal. Then the fill color I'm gonna set on a gradient, and you do this by changing this to a linear gradient. Now let's go into the fill color, and I'm gonna use like just a dark gray, but just so there's a bit of depth to this. So maybe like really dark to click on the last color too, and then go maybe even darker, something like this. And we will see this better on a black background, but we're just going to adjust this later on. I'm first going to fill the element. So press OK now. Let's click on the gradient fill and make sure the selection tool is selected. And then we can drag this gradient out a bit so it's a bit more soft, something like this. And then we can of course zoom in, select the text again, duplicate this, hold Shift and drag this down. Make sure this is above all the shape layers. And then we of course can type here description. Now again, in terms of design, I want this a bit smaller or maybe even thin. And also the fill color is way too wide. I think that's should dial this down a bit, maybe put something like this, and then maybe set it to light, making it a bit smaller. Let's go into the selection tool and let's move this so it's a bit aligned better. Okay, light is maybe a bit too light. Maybe regular would actually work well. Perfect. Now comments, of course, again, there's a lot of info here. We don't actually need that in my opinion. What I would like is maybe just to have a text here. So let's duplicate again this text and move this down. And let's type here comments so we know exactly what this is. And then we can go back to our screenshot and we're going to duplicate this by pressing Command D on Mac or Control D on Windows. And then just like we did before, let's use the ellipse tool to mask this guy out. And let's hold Shift again and hold spacebar to move this around. Perfect. And again, we can also call this avatar comment. Cool. And then of course we do want a name here. So let's go to the text tool. Then again, we can also duplicate one of our text layers by pressing Command D or Control D and then just dragging this down and then type in add. And I'm going to type in Tom's project. Let's select this all and I'm going to make this way smaller just to match this design a bit. I'm going to make this bold and I'm going to duplicate this again and hold Shift to make sure it's on the same line. And then I'm going to type here Casey, I really like. Now let's drag the video in just to see what this will look like. I'm just going to drag this in, make sure it's over the other video. We can always adjust this a bit, maybe scale it up, but it's almost perfect. Press S to scale it up. Nice. I'm going to turn the sound off. Now that's cool. Now we're going to make it rounded. And there's multiple ways to do this. You can add a mask, you can add a matte, or you can use this method. I'm going to add a simple choker to this. Just double click. Let's set this to 50. Then duplicate this effect by pressing Command D or Control D on Windows and set this to -50. And there we go. Now let's turn the screenshot off just for a second. And this already looks super, super cool. Now, of course, the alignment is not perfect, not at all. And that's what we're going to fix now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View, Show Rulers, and let's add a ruler by just dragging this out here. And now I'm just going to align things. So let's align this text first. Let's also add some spacing. I'm also going to make this text bold because it's the title. Then this image, let's move this down here. I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Then I'm going to use the inspiration that we saw earlier. Let's turn the fill color to none. And then let's add a stroke color. Set that to solid color and change the stroke color to a cool red. Now, nice and thin. I like that. I'm also going to move this so it's more out here. Now, this description is definitely not great. Let's also move this and make it snap. Something like this. And this description text, move that. The comments is also not perfect. And this text of the comment, let's make that regular. Nice. Align this image and align this a bit better. I'm going to select these all by holding shift and I'm going to drag them up a bit. Cool. We're getting somewhere. Make sure nothing is selected. And we got a really nice design going on. Now let's drag this guide out of the way. And I really like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything and I'm just going to center it. So make sure that this is centered. And now I want a cool background. So let's just select the video, duplicate that, select the bottom one and delete these simple chokers. And you do that by just clicking on it and hitting backspace. And go to effects and presets. And let's just use a fast box blur. Double click and let's turn this up really high and turn the repeat edge pixels off. Now that's really dope. If you want to increase this effect even more, you can press S to scale that up. You can even scale it up to the whole, basically whole comp, something like this. But do make sure that this is below all the other layers. That will make this look really cool. And what's also cool is that because it's linked to this image, you can see this really cool effect. Now what I also like to do is add a noise effect to this. So we can just go to layer, new, solid, make sure that this is black, press OK and press OK. Then let's add a noise to this, double click, turn off use color noise and increase this by a lot. Let's zoom in a bit and let's change the black solids blending mode to multiply, and that will have this really cool effect. And I'm just gonna press T for transparency and dial this down a lot. So it's just maybe set this to 25% and that will add a subtle noise effect in the background. I think that's really dope. Now if you want to, you can even go to layer, new, solid, press OK, and then add a 4-color gradient. This will add gradients in the background. Now, of course, these colors are horrible. But for example, if we make these black first or like a dark grayish, let's copy this code over, press OK. Or you can also use the eyedropper tool on this color. Just do this a couple times. Bloop, there we go. Then we can have this 1-color gradient here that we can put in the corner a bit, something like this. And same with this other gradient, we can make this, for example, a cool red effect. Maybe make this a bit darker, somewhere like this, and move this a bit, and move this point a bit. It's a bit softer. Cool, this will add a bit of depth to this. I also think this blue is way too bright, so let's click on this blue and also dial this down a lot. Perfect. Now, of course, we still need to animate it, and first I would animate this video in, and we can just make this come from the bottom. We can also blur it in. There's multiple ways to do this, but let's just use this simple position. We can just set a keyframe by pressing P. Let's go to second 1, set a keyframe, and let's go to the beginning, and then we can drag this out of the frame. And of course, select your keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. You go into the graph editor. Now let's add a curve to this, and I'm also going to add motion blur, enable motion blur. If we play this now, it should play nice and smooth, super dope. And of course, this background video that we have here, we also need to fade that in. So let's turn the graph editor off, press T for transparency, set a keyframe, drag this out, and let's set this to 0. Now for the rest of the text, we can use, for example, a blur and fade in. And there are several other text effects that we can use too. This description box, I can easily just unlink and then size it down and keyframe that. Now you get something like this. And of course, you can use this concept for any website. Like always, do leave a comment of what you want to see next. Do join the Social Creator Club Pro. Link is in the description. And then like always, thanks for all the support and I'll see you next time.